Barbara Boxer is not fighting for our jobs. She is only fighting for her own job.
You don't like the military.
And even Barbara Boxer has figured out that you all are kind of mad about government debt. You all are kind of upset about how big the government is growing. And so she's saying now, with 45 days ago, yes, I understand the deficit is a problem. Really? Really? Then why is it that she has voted for every increase in government spending that has ever come before her, with one exception? She voted against body armor for our troops in Iraq and Afghanistan. She voted against extended family leave for our troops in Iraq and Afghanistan. She voted against money to help prevent IED injury. She voted against money for post-traumatic stress syndrome or brain trauma. She voted against all those things. Why? Because she is an anti-war ideologue. And that is why in 1992 she campaigned on cutting the military budget in half. Now Barbara Boxer now is trying to visit with veterans, but her track record there is long and clear as well. Remember that general?
Yes.
Remember that little general when she looked down her nose and she said, "Do me a favor, don't call me ma'am, call me senator. It's just a thing I have. I've worked so hard for that title." You know what, Barbara? There are some things right now a heck of a lot more important than your title. And one of them is the jobs in this great community, and the other one is that we are spending and wasting taxpayer money, and our debt is spiraling out of control, and our children and our grandchildren will never be able to repay it. In the last 2 years alone, look, let's face it, all politicians seem to have a problem with spending. I mean, we've been racking up debt for a long time, and government has been growing for 60 years. 60 years. Just keeps growing and growing and growing. But it's also true that in the last 20 months alone, our debt has grown from 10.7 trillion to 13 trillion, on its way to 20 trillion. Maybe what happens to career politicians, people who have been there too long, maybe what happens is they forget why they were sent there. Or maybe they get so fixated on keeping their job forever that they keep thinking about how to spend more money and give more money away. That's why, by the way, I believe in term limits. I'm staying 12 years, that's it, that's all. 12 years. Two terms is enough to get something done. But while we are struggling with this kind of unemployment, Washington, D.C. has added 100,000 federal government bureaucrats in the last 12 months. Now, sometimes people say to me, well, you know, nobody's ever cut spending in Washington. How are you going to cut spending? Well, you know, one of the reasons I think our founding fathers believed that ours should be a citizen government is because they knew that citizens like us actually kind of know some stuff. You know how to solve problems, you know something about common sense, and one of the things we know how to do is balance our own checkbooks. Barbara Boxer doesn't know how to do that, apparently. She's balanced 142 checks, but okay, we know how to balance our checkbooks, and we know how to prioritize and cut spending. We have no idea how the government is spending our money. We have no idea. So I'm going to give you two kind of common sense things I think we should do right now. Let us put every piece of legislation up on the internet for public comment before it is voted upon. And let's have it fully costed out, so that we don't have these surprises like, oh, the health care bill. Yes, it will reduce your deficit. 4 weeks later. Whoops, just kidding. It's going to add to the deficit. By the way, if we had counted in business the way the government accounts, we'd all be in jail. I mean, we don't get $400 billion mistakes in a month in the real world. So let's put every agency budget up on the internet for everybody to see. We will be shocked and appalled by how our money is being spent. And every year, agency budgets increase and no one asks why. Did you know that most federal government agencies spend 20–25% of their budget in the last 2 months of the year? Why do you suppose they do that?
So they get the money next year.
Exactly, they do that because they don't ever want to go to an appropriations hearing and get asked, oh, you mean you can do with less? And every time they go to an appropriations hearing, the question is always, why do you need more money? The question is never, what did you do with the money you had? Why can't you do it with less? How do you measure the effectiveness of the programs that you're spending taxpayer money on? None of those questions are ever asked, and they need to be asked. We have come to tolerate a lack of performance, a lack of accountability, and a lack of transparency on behalf of Washington, D.C. that we would not tolerate in any other segment of our society, and we can tolerate it no longer.
That's right.
Sometimes people say, well, honey, nobody's ever cut spending in Washington. Why do you think you can? And I can't on my own. The only way I will be successful is if people feel and see the wave of revolt wash all the way back to Washington, D.C., and people say, oh my, the people have woken up and they are demanding something different. But this isn't rocket science, folks. With the right support, it takes courage and will to cut spending. But it doesn't take rocket science, which is good because I'm not a rocket scientist. Let me tell you a little story. When I was 32 years old, I was put in charge of a group of engineers for the first time. And I worked at the time for the Bell system, AT&T, where I met my husband. And I was intimidated. I mean, you have to remember, I was a Kelly girl. I was a medieval history major. I was a law school dropout. I was a receptionist. And all of a sudden, I'm put in charge of this group of engineers. And my boss says to me, you know, Carly, these engineers engineer so that we can purchase $2.5 billion worth of stuff every year. And we think that is too much money, and we want you to figure out how to save some money. So I thought about that a little bit. Oh, I can't teach these engineers how to be better engineers. They know what they're doing. I can't do that. But what could I do, I thought. So, well, maybe I'll look at a bill for some of this stuff. So I looked at the bill. And I found a mistake. And I looked at another bill. And I found another mistake. And 18 months later, I had 90 people looking at bills, and I found $300 million worth of mistakes. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I have been managing billions of dollars for 25 years. By the time I left Hewlett-Packard, it was an $88 billion company. And I will guarantee you this. You show me $1 billion that no one's accountable for, no one scrutinizes, no one's responsible for deciding whether that money is spent wisely and well, and I will show you hundreds of millions of dollars worth of waste. And we now have a federal budget that is in the trillions of dollars, and nobody's minding the store. Right. So let's start looking. Yeah. And let us start with the most basic step of all. What do you do when your teenager has a spending problem? You quit giving them money. What should we do now that Washington has a spending problem? Let us quit sending them money. No new taxes for any reason at any time. What, sir? We have audience participation.
Your kid cannot send you to jail for not paying taxes, or we wouldn't.
Well, look, that's why I signed the no new taxes pledge. No new taxes, no new taxes, no new taxes, no new taxes. You have a spending problem. You don't get any more of our money. Let's make the tax cuts permanent. And oh, by the way, now let's start getting about the business of figuring out how and where we can spend less. Remember Barbara Boxer talking about, oh yes, I'm concerned about the deficit? Really? Really, ask your friends and neighbors why it is then that she voted 4 times, not once, not twice, 4 times against a pretty modest